All right, well, listen, we'll get underway now. So, e ngā mana, e ngā reo, e ngā tai e whā, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Really warm welcome to you all, to all of us as a group coming together for this Wayfinding, a very aptly titled presentation about our data visualization tool, exploring connections between Aotearoa, New Zealand and Latin America. It's an exciting moment for us. We've had 2 launches to date, one in Auckland, one in Wellington, and now with our webinar, we want to offer it out to the rest of the country to say, come on board, learn about the tool. And as I said, for those of you who have already used it, we look forward to hearing about your experiences using it, and also talking about our wish lists. Warm welcome, we have Joseph Michael, Tristan Gray from Arco Limited, who developed the tool with us. So greetings, guys. 3 wonderful presenters, Matt Plummer, Simon Russell, and also, and I'm looking out the back, and Phil Grunert Collins from New Zealand Trade and Enterprise to also talk about their experiences using the tool. And then finally, Nicole Freeman from the Latin America Cape team, who is our project lead for the Wayfinding tool, who's over in Rio at the moment. So kia ora, Nicole, great to have you with us. And finally, I'm Craig Nicholson. I'm the Deputy Director of the Latin America Cape. So once again, very warm welcome to this Wayfinding webinar. Get your questions ready, your comments. We'll get underway. I'll pass over to Tristan from the Arco team. Tristan, over to you.
Hello, I'll just share my screen. Okay, has that come through?
Yep. Want me to start with a bit of an intro, Tristan?
Yeah, you can go for a bit of an intro, Joe.
So thanks, Craig. Joseph Michael here from the AUT Art Science Lab, also Arco Limited. We've developed the tool alongside the Cape. First, a couple of thanks to the Cape team, obviously, for their support in developing this. Also to acknowledge our team, Tristan, who you'll hear from in a second, and the wider team, Josh, the designer. We've had a whole team of data gurus going through the data for this tool as well. And thanks to NZTE, MFAT, Education NZ, Universities New Zealand, and the Latin America Business Council, who have all provided data TIN network as well. So Wayfinding started with a conversation with Matthew following on from the project we did on the Amazon. It was an artistic project. Matthew wanted to find a way to sort of bridge the gap between New Zealand and Latin America, and without eliminating the ocean that connects us, finding ways that we could connect New Zealanders with Latin America. And so we idealized quite a few different ways of doing this, and in the end it came up with a tool that shows some of the links between the business, economic and government ties between New Zealand and Latin America. In terms of the tool, the way that we've defined it is it encompasses 19 countries in Latin America. It's a population of almost 650 million people. And we're focused on countries that speak Spanish or Portuguese. And now Tristan's just going to run us through the tool.
Yeah, so in terms of this kind of project, obviously we're swimming in a lot of data, so it's always about extracting that kind of story from the data. And we kind of incorporated that into like the navigation of the website as well, that you can come through and digest it easily in terms of the different categories that we kind of cover. So there's multiple ways to kind of get around the website. And we want it to be as just intuitive as possible. So you could just digest it and go through it one by one, or jump to certain categories that you feel are more important to yourself. That's New Zealand business operating in Latin America. A lot of this is quite high-level data.
And obviously, once you see a graph, you can use the filter function, and then you can filter out sectors or countries that you're interested in.
Especially if you're just interested in certain countries, then on your own need. And a main feature that Kate really wanted was the download feature, that you could customize it to what you wanted and then have a little takeaway. Tech data. there's quite a range. What's some of your favorite graphs, Joe?
Obviously, the media graph is one that's interesting for me. Some of the data we sourced from, there was a variety of sources, obviously, StatsNZ use different techniques to source the data, but specifically with this one, we created an API, which is basically a little line of code that scans the internet and puts subject lines or data into a spreadsheet for us. So with this, we scanned all of the Latin America media sites that we could find. I think it was numbering over 600 different sites. It basically scans their websites for any mention of New Zealand. Then it brings it into a data set, and then we filter those articles based on the type of article that it is. And then you can start to see trends of how New Zealand is understood or being published in the Latin America media.
A general trend that we're getting more interested, or people are more interested in New Zealand over there.
So one of the interesting things, obviously, is during COVID, there was a lot of news around New Zealand. And what this data shows is that the interest in New Zealand's, I guess, approach to the COVID response is that a lot of other articles appear as well. So we become in the news, but then because we're in the news, these news sites then publish a number of other articles. Tristan, if you just go through the 4 different categories.
So I'll jump back to education. Joint research. This is a very large data set, probably our largest data set by far, actually. Showing any kind of collaboration we've had with the different Latin American countries. And again, you can come through and filter out the countries that might not be of interest to your needs.
One of the things that we wanted to do was sort of show the overlap between business and government and education. Perhaps if you're on here, you can see areas of collaboration through education that we're not capitalizing on in business. Student visas, for example, the graph shows that, well, this is student visas, but there's also a graph that shows where you can study in Latin America. Prime Minister's scholarships. If you go to the overseas study one, it's not
the student exchange
partnerships. So there you can also click on to explore the map. Shows the institutes and the universities that partner. And then from the map view, you can also filter through some of the data that appears in other areas of the site.
But at every stage, it's fully customizable depending on what you're, I guess, interested in. Even again down to the country level.
One of the things that I guess we were looking for, and this is Philip will probably talk a little bit about this, we wanted to see if some of the countries that had embassies or New Zealand Trade and Enterprise offices were a focus of business activity or study activity, just to sort of start to see if there's any trends through education leading on to business partnerships, specifically through things like the Prime Minister's scholarships.
There's a lot of detail and a lot of data under the hood, all there to be discovered, I guess.
And then also you can, before Craig, you had a question, but Tristan was
no, you keep on. I was going to just go to Nicole and just check in with her, but you go.
Also, Tristan, if you show the about pages, if you navigate to the other side of the website, you can find out about wayfinding and also about the Cape. There's a little how-to video there. The other thing as well, Tristan, if you go back to one of the graphs, one of the things we haven't mentioned is the about this data. So if you click on about this data, it gives information on what the data is showing us. It shows us how to read the chart, customize it, and you can also see the data sources.
Quite a range of different data sources throughout this project. Some of it was even open source, but a lot of it was sourcing directly from the different institutions or even embassies. Even Cape's data.
this is one of my highlights actually. Shows the broad range of all the Cape activity.
And some more high-level data. This is quite interesting. So obviously with the COVID, the resident visas getting in quite high demand. And again, quite a rich resource in terms of all the criteria that's involved in those different types of visas.
So there's two ways you can navigate, obviously up the top, finding the menu in the view categories section, or on the side navigation as well.
So, yeah. Do you have any questions in terms of how the website's been structured?
So yeah, let's move into the question mode. So if you do want to ask a question, please unmute yourself and then ask the question. We do have 2 questions already. So the first one is comment, ! Great tool. In terms of companies, is there an opportunity to know which companies are involved with Latin America? That's the first part of the question. And second part is it possible to see the university students are going to, but is it also possible to see the businesses?
The first one I can answer. All of these data sets, we can only publish data that is publicly available. So NZTE, which has been a great partner in the project, they have a lot of data on the specific companies that are operating in Latin America, but because that's sensitive data, we're not allowed to publish it. But what we encourage people to do is obviously use the tool and then obviously talk to NZTE, because there's a wealth of knowledge within that system. And once you sign up for as a program operator or a business that's operating in NZTE, Philip will let you know more about that.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
There's a juggle between obviously showing as much data as possible, but then with each data set there are limitations on what we can publish.
Yeah, that's correct, Joseph. We would love to share that company data, but of course we can't. But we see it as a conversation starter. It's a really great, this tool allows you to see, hey, there are 69 agri-tech companies operating in Chile, and there's an embassy there. So you already know, okay, if I'm an agri-tech company exploring that market, I can talk to the embassy or to NZTE or to the Latin American Business Council or to the Latin American Cape, and then they can put me in touch with someone. So that's how we see this tool as like a really powerful resource to kind of start that conversation.
Great. Okay, thanks, guys. Next one is, will the wayfinding tool be automatically updated on a regular basis? Or is it
can't be automatically updated because we usually have to wait for embassies to respond. But there is the media one, which Joe's working on to get that automated. Some of it could be. It just depends on where that data is coming from, whether it's in our control or not.
And also that's the discussion, obviously, with Cape wrapping up towards the end of this year. We're updating the site, and we've actually got a number of updates that I'll talk about a little later on that we're working on. We're still looking for feedback and input on things that we can add to the site. And then there's several discussions going on in the background as where does this the site go from here? How do we keep it updated for the next, for the foreseeable future? And do we look to expand it into other areas that are interested, maybe complementing Australia and Asia, in order to keep the whole site interested and the whole site active and people interested in Latin America.
Great.
Some data doesn't come out to like annually anyway. Like GDP data, you could kind of wait for the next year where it gets updated. Like we won't have 2004 data till the end of this year, obviously. So some situations kind of tend to have, it could be done automated, but some just will naturally not be.
This graph actually specifically is interesting because we wanted it to be the most up-to-date, and every data set we want to be the most up-to-date that it can be. So the import and export data we have is released on a monthly basis, so we can actually have that to 2023, whereas GDP is a year behind. So the most up-to-date data we have that's released with GDP is 2022, but if you go into the About This data, we've used a tool which releases estimates of the GDP. It's fairly accurate, but the 2023 data is estimated from the World Economic Outlook. So that way there's always a juggle because every data set gets released at different times.
Great, thanks guys. Listen, we've got another question from someone. I think it's Palmerston North City Council of, I think you've unmuted yourself, so it'd be great to hear your voice. Can you ask your question, please?
Good morning. Am I audible?
Yep, yeah, absolutely.
So very good morning, Kanakoto Morena. I'm Kunal Chunkar. I'm the International Relations Advisor for the Palmerston North City Council. And first off, I just wanted to thank the team for arranging this particular webinar and extending it to us. It's a fantastic tool, so congratulations, like I've already said in my previous questions. My second question was particularly limited to the scraping that happens for the data. It was said that it's basically in Spanish and another language that the scraping does. So is it only limited to the two languages? And if yes, is there a possibility of augmenting to other language scraping as well? And the second tier to this is, are they only limited to news sources? Because even that was kind of quoted in the talk that they normally go into the open website and they scrape news websites and news agencies.
Don't worry about it.
So yeah. Thank you.
This was just related to this one specific graph. Every data set comes from a different place. Sometimes it's Stats NZ, sometimes NZT or one of our partners. So this one specifically was first of all looking for and trying to identify as many, if not all, of the Latin American news outlet sources. And then we verified that they were indeed a news outlet. And then from there, it filters through any version of New Zealand in the different languages, and it's that's easy enough to you can adapt it for as many languages as you want.
Yeah, this is the only one that has the API or the data scraping. Everything else is sourced in a different manner.
And every part of the website, if you look on About This data, you can see where the source of the data comes from.
Great, thanks guys. We'll go on to the next one is, I'm not sure, Jimena, if you can unmute yourself. I've tried to unmute you, but you have a question.
Yes, thank you very much for this very useful information. And I find very important to have this effort available in order to look at the relation of New Zealand and Latin America. And I have a question, if I'm sorry if you have mentioned it before, but is there any information about tourism and tourist flows between the two regions? Thank you very much.
I think that's probably more of a question for Kate, because we're trying to cover what the breadth of what Kate kind of covers, but we have had that question a few times, so I think that's kind of a possibility.
There's a couple of graphs that come close. One is the visas. If you go to the
Working holiday, or
it's working holiday visas. Tourist data is a bit harder to catch, but it's definitely a possibility that we could look to include that. Most of the data also is applied to New Zealand in the direction of Latin America. There's some data sets that go both ways, but really primarily, I guess we're focused on the untapped potential from New Zealand looking to Latin America.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Jimena, and great to have you with us from the Consulate of Colombia based in Auckland. So wonderful to have you with us and for your support.
Thanks for your question.
Next question is Kate or NZ Inc. promoting this tool in Latin America as well as a way to present Aotearoa New Zealand as an interesting partner for business and education? Phil, do you want to take it in terms of how NZT may be promoting it in Latin America?
Yeah, sure. So I've shared this tool with our team. So we have offices in Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, and Chile, and they cover other countries as well. So I've made sure that everyone is aware of the tool. They know how to use it. And because again, it's a really good resource for presentations or when talking to the relationships between both regions. It is, I think, probably to the point is it is quite from New Zealand, you know, the focus is more from New Zealand to Latin America. I think if further down the line we get more kind of data sets that go both ways, then probably our teams in market will be able also to kind of to talk a bit more to that kind of to businesses coming to New Zealand and kind of seeing that relationship. But yeah, so this has been shared and it's being promoted now in all the countries.
Mm. And just thanks, Phil. And just to add to that, yes, with all of our NZ partners, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, New Zealand embassies, there are 5 posts in Latin America. Absolutely. Just a quick word of that, it is really important for us. It is a proof of concept to show there's a critical mass of activity between New Zealand and Latin America, because often in the Cape we get asked, well, how important is Latin America? How relevant is it? So this tool is a wonderful way of showing that in a number of different categories, as we've shown you, of education, society, diplomacy, and so on. So absolutely promoting it. And also I'm about to leave on a university's delegation. We will also be using this in Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, and Chile. So very much is it to show currency relevance, but to get people excited as well, because we know that's one of the challenges in terms of New Zealand isolated, to actually show, no, it's important for our diversification of opportunities. All right, thanks very much for that question. Next one, do you have data on where the most interest is in studying at New Zealand universities coming from Latin America?
We're obviously looking at this one here. This data shows, again, it shows New Zealand opportunities in Latin America, but Tristan, if you click to the LATAM institutions, these are dual MOUs or exchange partnerships. So any of these universities in the Latin American countries can also then travel to New Zealand.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Joe. Next one, is Cape and New Zealand Link promoting this tool in Latin America as well as a way to present Aotearoa New Zealand as an interesting partner for business and education? We've already answered that, absolutely. Next one, Cristina Alvarado. I've asked you to unmute. Can you ask your question, please?
Yes. How are you? So I have 2 questions. One would be if there can be a breakdown into categories within the business areas. And the reason I ask this is because I'm the commercial manager for Data and Insights at NZX, and we're trying to broaden within the areas, and being from Latin America, of course, Latin America is of big focus to us to try to understand how we can cooperate between the countries in the region. And because we're focused right now on dairy, if we could have like a subdivision, because for example, if I look at food and beverage and consumer goods, that's huge, and there are a lot of products that can be under that. But if we could see, for example, what subdivision or subcategory is within those areas, then it would give like a better view of the industry and understand more what these areas cover. And even for manufacturing, I'll be interested to know what different areas are within manufacturing. So yeah, that's my first question. The second one has to do with the software in terms of have you guys developed this visualization by coding it yourselves, or are you working using another software as a base to develop this?
I can answer the first question. Again, it's thanks for your question. We want to publish as detailed data as possible, but there's always this juggle of being able to publish data and also the sensitivity of it. But again, as Philip mentioned, it's obviously a conversation starter, and all of that data does exist, but it's just a lot of it's tied up within, I guess, the legal Philip's got his hand raised, so he can talk to that.
Yeah, just to comment as well, we've come to realize that New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, that our kind of subsector tagging is not, the quality of the data is not great, and we're actually going through, at the moment, we're going through a whole project of kind of defining really clear subsector categories. So if there is an update of this data in the future, which it's likely there's going to be one, hopefully in the next few months we will be able to add some of those subsector categories, because we will have like tidier data from our end. I think the issue comes when it's very few companies, for example. I don't know. I think our criteria was if we have like under 5 companies selling, and I don't know, one sort of consumer good into a particular country. Our concern was then that you could, by using all these different data points, you could kind of then guess who that company might be. But I think, as you said, in very broad sectors such as food and beverage or manufacturing, that should not be an issue. So again, I would say watch the space. We're working on it to get that data.
If you look at the TIN data as well, that has a different set of data. It's obviously also business data, but this is done from a survey, and so every company that's surveyed has allowed their data to be public. So in some of that, we can get a bit more data. And then in terms of the coding, Tristan, who's obviously showing us around the website, he can talk a little bit to that. It's completely.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of how we addressed this project to begin with, is that we wanted to go down a bit of a bespoke path, so we had full control over how we had these charts and how we laid out the website. So we did go down a full, I guess, coding kind of path instead of using pre-existing tools. We're still using a charting library, but it is still fully coded and customized, which gives us the opportunity to kind of get kind of more unique charts and kind of combine certain charts as well. For instance, the import, exports, and GDP. This is not really a chart that exists out of the box, but it gives us that chance to tell those stories. And Mexico is our biggest trading partner, but Brazil is the biggest GDP. So the data has kind of dictated how we wanted to show these, and coding it was the only way to achieve that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, great. Thanks for the question. Really good question, Christina. Listen, we'll move on now. I'm just noting, Gloriana, thanks so much for your question. We'll just hold that for after we have the 3 presentations about other user experiences, but really important question about Costa Rica being also featured, given that we do have a wonderful honorary consul here in New Zealand, in Wellington. So Gloriana, we'll leave your question to after the next presentations. And someone else was just asking a question about which are do we have data on the most attractive Latin markets for NZ businesses? So we'll just hold that there. And now we'll move into the next section. Guys, if I could get you to stop sharing the screen at your end. Thank you. So now we're going to move into hearing from 3 of our wonderful partners who we work really closely with, but they know they've been really active very quickly to start using the tool. So what we think is really important is to also hear some sort of people who are actually using it, the kind of impacts that it's creating, and from different contexts. So it's my great pleasure to introduce our wonderful colleague, Matt Plummer from Victoria University. Matt, over to you. You've got 4 minutes, go.
Thank you, Craig, and morena koutou katoa. I'll just quickly share my screen. So a quick, hopefully you can see that now. Thumbs up from Sydney. Perfect. So yeah, as one of the people that's been involved in this project, it's been great to see it develop. And coming from Victoria University of Wellington to Here Waka, as I do, the data around education and research, and joint research in particular, is really interesting. And that section of the tool has been something that I've been able to use recently. As Craig mentioned a moment ago, there's a forthcoming delegation focused on research, 2 parts of Latin America. And so there's a broad national interest in that, but I was interested and asked to sort of find some information around our institution-specific data. So I just want to quickly run through some of the ways I did that, both in the tool and in sort of complementary ways to it. And I think Craig mentioned that that delegation is going to Mexico as well, but the countries I was asked to focus on are Brazil, Chile, and Colombia. So the question is, how do we visualize and present data about existing research connections between my specific institution in those countries? And there's a few ways in which the tool can be really useful. And I'd also highlight that I am making use, in this case, rather than going to the website and doing a live demonstration, and as Tristan and Michael have just done, I use that download functionality to create a slide deck based on filtered data that is relevant to the particular inquiries that were asked of me. So I just used the general high level one. We can see here that in the study abroad and exchange partnerships that you can filter that by institution. And here we can see a nice high level overview of the travel between Victoria University and some of these other Latin American countries, and how those arrangements are in place to facilitate that. And then when we drill down into the institutions, we can get a more detailed, fine-grained view of where those partnerships and agreements, and underpinning that, the exchange of people, ideas, cultural information, all is sort of, I think, implicit in these visualizations, takes place as well. We can also see at a regional level rather than institutional level for the Pimsleur scholarships, the Prime Minister's scholarships for Latin America, where from a regional level, people from New Zealand are making use of that scholarship to travel. And once again, we can see some different parts of the travel destinations in Latin America. And I haven't done it in these cases, but it would be very easy for me to use the filter tool to just have only data from those countries of specific interest, which I think is incredibly useful customization functionality of the tool in a range of cases. There's also data from an open source, or from a large data set, a tool called Dimensions, which includes data on co-publications, and that allows us to see where New Zealand researchers have collaborated and co-authored publications, which include authors from different Latin American countries, and also allows us to see what disciplinary areas have been a focus in that collaboration. So that's really interesting for someone like Margaret Hyland, our Deputy Vice Chancellor Research, who's going to Latin America. Where are those critical areas of, where are those areas of critical mass in terms of research collaboration opportunity? Where might we be able to do more? And you can see that drilled down by country as well. I really love, just as a high level view, the ability to have this mapping feature. Here I've just sort of drilled down into VW Exchanges Latin America. So it's a geographic, beautifully designed representation of some of that data we've seen in a Sankey graph earlier. But if you've got a nice visual presentation slide to talk to, it gives you another opportunity to sort of present that data in a geographical way. And then just as a final quick couple of points from me, there was some more detail and specificity that was requested that was not necessarily available out of the box in the tool as it currently stands, but that data was under the hood. So what I did was I sort of drilled down a little bit more into institution specific data around some of those co-publications, and particularly in this graph where we've got Victoria researchers co-authoring with different institutional authors from different parts of Latin America and those countries at an institutional level. And so that gives a sense of where we have collaborated the most in the last 5 years. So, and I tried to, and forgive any amateur attempts at this, mimic the design aesthetic of the tool in these examples as well. And there's one by institution and then one by disciplinary area. So I think it's important to realize that there's so much work that's been done to collate and sort of bring together these different data sets, have a common aesthetic. A lot of the work under the hood is to get the data to source from different areas, and there's always a trade-off between how general you can make things and how specific. But in this case, I was able to use that as a starting point to sort of enrich some of those insights that were available in the tool, to try and adopt the aesthetic of the tool with the limited skills I have, but to present sort of a story that was relevant and was specific and leveraged the great work that the team has done. And that's my user story.
Yeah, fantastic. Great to see how you have kind of expanded out and using it for that really specific context of Victoria University as well. So well done to you, as you said. You know, you're using your skills to great impact. So thank you. All right, now let's pass over. Now we're going to change from the tertiary education sector over into the aviation sector. So warm welcome to Simon Russ, our dear colleague from Eagle Aviation. Over to you, Simon.
Thanks, Craig. No, much appreciated. Kia ora, everybody. Buenos dias. Bom dia for the Brazilians. My involvement, I think probably 35 plus, nearly 40 years or more in aviation. I spent a lot of time in Air New Zealand, the last 20 years consulting. But this has been a dream for about 30, 35 years to see a non-stop flight to Brazil, which is obviously, as we've touched on today, one of the largest or the largest country in Latin America. If I can share my screen, and I'll just keep talking while I'm showing that. One of the things we learned recently was that every wide body flight, wide body being a 787 or a 777 type aircraft, is worth $150 million a day in tourism value for the country. And every flight brings so many $100 million a year of freight value. So a daily flight is something like at least $1 billion worth of tourism value for the country on an annual basis. So it's massive in terms of what non-stop flights do. There's a question that Jimena asked before about Colombia. The aviation world, and why the wayfinding tool is really fascinating for me, and talk to the team on and off, and we'll continue to talk, is the richness of the data and the ability to expand out the data is really valuable for business and tourism, which Jimena touched on. So we can see from the aviation side accessing databases. So I pulled 1 million rows of data, which represents quite a lot of people, but it's where the tourism flows, and I'll show you just as soon as I get my screen up, but the tourism flows are phenomenal. What's happening between Asia and Latin America, New Zealand becomes quite an interesting waypoint, as it were. So let me just find my thing here, but I will keep talking, which is
okay, Simon, because I can bring it up if you
if you could, thank you, Craig.
Okay, sure.
So huge value for tourism. Tourism drives trade. As I mentioned, as soon as LATAM started their non-stop flights, it just really stimulated the market. So the New Zealand-Brazil business chambers only been going for 5 months. The mandate and the objective is to fast track a non-stop flight from Auckland to Sao Paulo, Brazil. Don't know who yet, but obviously we think there's about 6 or 7 airlines that could do it. It would be preferable that it was our national carrier in New Zealand, but it also connects Asia and India with the whole of South America. So all the traffic going to South America over Santiago today, we understand there's about 30% going on to Brazil. And the moment LATAM started their flights from Australia and New Zealand, it just completely stimulated the market. So the biggest markets, Colombia, for example, Australia and China are the largest traffic flows into Colombia. Craig, can we just have the next slide, please?
Yep.
So again, the Mercator projection does a disservice to New Zealand, but we are the southern crossing to get to Latin America. And this chart shows all of the connectivity from Auckland today and more in the future. We need to start to put Jakarta into the map there as well, but it also connects to Australia and New Zealand and the Pacific Oceania to Latin America, and then across obviously to Europe for Kiwis and Australians wanting to do a 1 or 2 stop to Europe. So it's a massive opportunity. It's an east-west flow. It's an all-year flow. Latin America exports a lot of food. Brazil is I think the #1 food producer in the world for a number of categories, including beef. But it's all going to Asia. We've got a lot of produce coming out of New Zealand. Again, drilling into the trade statistics, I think IEC.org or .com and the OECD data, etc. There's a lot of richness in there. And again, I really commend the Cape team for what they've done with this, and Joseph and the team. It's the beginnings of quite an astonishing exploration of the data. So this is Cirium data, which is a global airline data source. it shows that most of the traffic between Asia and Latin America is going over the Middle East hubs, which is not unsurprising, Doha and Dubai. Australia's at the bottom there stimulated a lot of traffic with its non-stops in New Zealand as well through Chile. And then the traffic's going up to Brazil, but also how the whole of the world flies between Asia, Australasia and South America. And next slide, Craig. So wayfinding data really supports and informs the business cases that we're developing now. Digging in even further, as I mentioned, on the trade data, what types of produce and products would fly by air versus via sea. And so air travel, the belly space on an aircraft, 80% of all of the cargo out of was it Auckland is traveled on passenger aircraft, not freighter aircraft. So, and that's a global phenomenon. So the aviation sector with tourism really shows how trade can be facilitated, and that's people as well. So I promised to one of my colleagues that there needs to be at least 44 business class seats on whoever flies to Brazil non-stop, because there's such a demand for business traffic. And if you're doing a 12, 13 or 14 hour flight to Brazil, you need business class if the university will let you, Craig. So we'll see if we can arrange that. Anyway, look, I think that's enough from me, but thank you to the team. Wonderful data exploration tool. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Simon. And great to hear those wonderful numbers you were sharing as well about, 30% of the traffic that's going New Zealand to Chile and then flies on to Brazil, for example. So really interesting statistics. All right. Thank you for that aviation sector perspective. We'll pass on now quickly to Phil Grunert-Collins, Latin American Market Manager for NZTE. Phil, over to you.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Phil Grunert toko ingoa. I'm Phil Grunert. I'm the market manager for New Zealand Trade and Enterprise based in Auckland. So I'm the LATAM team member that is actually based here. So quite lonely job. Whilst all my lovely colleagues are over in region, helping companies to succeed in Latin America. So so this tool is perfect for me as a regional representative in New Zealand. Latin America is not top of mind in comparison to other regions such as Australia or the US, for example, for New Zealand exporters, but there are huge opportunities. So my job, a big part of my job is actually promoting those opportunities. So having such a visual tool is really, really great. We have a lot of really rich data, but we don't present them in such a appealing way as the wayfinding tool. So it actually has been really helpful when engaging with stakeholders, when, for example, at business presentations or even briefing ambassadors about the region. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen and kind of explain how I use the tool. As you can imagine, of course, my happy place is the business section. So again, what I said before is there's a lot around kind of like the storytelling and the conversation starter here. So really kind of showcasing that Latin America actually has a lot of connections with New Zealand, that New Zealand Inc. is present in region. So if you're exploring and thinking of diversifying your export markets as an exporter, actually people have been there before you, and there's a huge support network that you can rely on. And I think that's the key thing. I think a lot of people know someone who knows someone in the UK or in the US or in Australia, perhaps not so much in Latin America, but I think from our experience working with companies, those peer-to-peer connections are actually really valuable. That's where you get really great insights. So we would love to facilitate those connections. And I think this tool really visualizes that. So what I've done here is just starting with all the support network that not only businesses, but everyone has. So for example, you've got the embassy in Chile, you've got an NZT office in Chile with quite large teams as well. And then you can, for example, say, well, I'm an agri-tech company. Who else has been, who else is out there? So who could I get in touch with? And then you realize, well, there are like almost 50 tech companies selling into Mexico, there's an office there, there's an embassy, might get in touch and with Phil or with the team over there and just kind of start having those conversations, because again, those peer-to-peer learnings are really, really valuable kind of from our experience. Just trying to move this now, there we go. The other point that I found really, really valuable as well is of course, the trade flows. So that's really interesting. The other day, we welcomed a delegation from the US-Mexico Chamber of Commerce. And it was really great to see the Mexican deputy head of mission using one of those slides to actually show that Mexico is the New Zealand largest trading partner in Latin America. So that was just really interesting and just really visually impactful to see kind of those export flows. And then I think lastly as well, the free trade agreement. So I think that's such a wonderful slide. You have like, I would just screenshot this and just copy paste this in any presentation just to show, hey, we have free trade agreements that in really important markets such as Mexico, Chile, or Peru, you can actually sell your goods tariff free. And actually, it also helps to identify those gaps where New Zealand probably should invest and kind of leverage and kind of lobby to be part of those free trade agreement, which I think the current government actually now is doing in the case of the likes of Pacific Alliance. Of course, Mercosur is a really interesting trading bloc as well. Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay. But again, this shows just in one slide all the free trade agreement we have. So really, really great. And then moving away from business, actually, I really like the society as well, and just seeing those people-to-people links, because then actually, it's not all about business. Business happens with relationships and with people. So actually, looking at this data as well, where you see, well, there's a huge Mexican community in New Zealand. There's a huge Brazilian community in New Zealand. How can we engage and tap into those communities as well in terms of thinking, perhaps sourcing talent or establishing business relationships, or so there's a lot in there as well. That was one of my biggest learning, probably, just seeing those links. I'm pretty much really focused on the business side of things, but seeing this holistic view was actually really powerful. So thank you so much, Kate. It has been an absolute pleasure of working with you on this tool. And again, we hope to continue collaborating on this, providing further and more detailed data in the future.
Thanks so much, Phil, and for your support, both you and the NZT team. But I think you described it nicely, and I always like to think, who are the people, faces, the lives, the identities, the places behind the data? And when you look at it in that way, I think that's an amazing group of people, both here in New Zealand and, of course, in Latin America, but in all of that diversity of countries in Latin America. So great opportunities. Thanks, Phil. And also, I love what you said about how you've done a screenshot. But remember, you can actually download the graph. So it's a very easy download process, and you get the high resolution ones that you can just then pick up and put in presentations. So, Phil, it sounds like you use those to great impact with the Mexico Chamber of Commerce. So well done. Great. Well, listen, let's now move into the next section. We've got about 10 minutes left. We'll just deal with a couple of the questions that were remaining from the last section. And then we'll come back to you and hear about any other ways that you either may be using the data already, the Wayfinding web tool, but also any wish list, anything else you think or would hope could be added to the tool. So I'll just check in on the questions. So Gloriana, if you're there, if you could just...
Hi everyone. I'm Gloriana, the Honorary Consul of Costa Rica, and I think my question was mostly answered by Matt Plummer, but I do want to just commendate such a good amount of information that is already bringing to get Latin America closer to New Zealand, and really good to see it from all perspectives, from education to aviation, opportunities for tourism and trade. So thanks a lot, Craig, for it.
Yeah, no, thanks, Gloriana. Great. Gloriana is the Honorary Consul for Costa Rica based here in Wellington, doing a great job. Thanks, Gloriana. Next question is, do you have data on what are the most attractive LATAM markets for New Zealand agri-tech businesses? Phil?
Yes, I was just typing away in the chat, actually, typing up that answer, and I'm going to share some links as well. In short, Chile has been the kind of traditional point of entry into the region, long-standing people-to-people links and business relationship as well, free trade agreement, and actually south of Chile, really similar climate to New Zealand. So if we think dairy farming, pasture-based dairy farming solutions, really well known and really good reputation in Chile, in Uruguay, and Argentina. So really good reputation there. You come in, it's like a really well-known brand. New Zealand, so that's actually, the door is open there. The other big market would be Brazil. That's a bit trickier because of tariffs and entry barriers. It's a bit more protectionist, that market, but there are workarounds around that. You can use Uruguay as port of entry with free trade zones and leveraging that kind of Mercosur trading bloc agreement. Ecuador as well. New Zealand technology has really good reputation there in the dairy sector. And then I would say Mexico is for horticulture. So high value protected crops, a lot of opportunity there. That's kind of in a nutshell. I'm going to share a link as well in the chat.
Thanks so much, Phil. Next questions, Armin Gutke. If you want to just ask your questions really quickly, say where you're from, role, and just ask your questions very quickly because we've got about 5 minutes left. Go for it. Okay, I mean, I'll ask a question for you. Is it possible to drill into the total value of export and import for technology related to the transport sector specifically? Phil.
Oh, sorry, I missed that one. I was just trying to share the link. Can you repeat there's my link now. Can you repeat the question, sorry?
Sure. Is it possible to drill into the total value of export and import for technology related to the transport sector specifically?
I think it's probably the tin data, but yeah, no, I don't think so at the moment.
It sounds too specific for what I think one of the comments before about the breakdown within even the manufacturing sector, we don't have that detail. Correct, Joe? Interesting.
Again, a case depends on each category or data set. This data is available. If you go to the source of the About This Data section, you can see the source of the data, and I think it's the World Development Indicators. There is actually a graph there that you can access. I guess what we try to talk about is this is a port of entry into some of this information, because we're covering a broad range of topics, including diplomacy and society. It's hard to publish detailed data on every single graph, but some of that does exist. And if you go to the About This Data, sometimes that'll take you through to a hyperlink of if it's possible to drill into that data. And for example, there you can create your own filters and drill right into the data if it's available publicly.
Hi, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah, is that you, Armin?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so sorry, is it possible for you to maybe share a link to that reference source that you mentioned?
Someone can bring up the website, Tristan, or someone, if you can bring up a live version of the website.
Yeah, and sorry, while you're doing that, the last question really was, it's great to see this for Latin America. I'm just wondering if this is something that's also sort of in the future going to maybe be expanded at more of a global level. So obviously using some of this great stuff and sharing it.
Yeah.
At that level.
Just to answer it really quickly, we don't have that at the moment, but there has been some approaches to say, what about Asia? And now you're saying, what about globally? This is a brilliant first start, New Zealand, Latin America. But as we go ahead into the future, and Joe and his team, as I said, there are people making approaches and asking those questions. So watch the space is all we can say at the moment. Joe, do you want to comment on that quickly?
Yep, and if Tristan, if you go to the trade data set, I think it's one up. Where's the business? The GDP. If you go to about this data there, and then you scroll down, you can see the 3 links. And if you, obviously the World Development Indicators takes you to another website, but there that has very detailed data on imports and exports, and you'll be able to find that, I would say, in there.
Great, thank you.
Just quickly, I can see Matthew, our director, he's got his hand up. So Matthew, over to you. Any
just
comment,
speaking
question?
very quickly, we are thinking of enhancing the data from the tin data. That's one of the areas we're talking about to make things a little better.
Great.
Even more spectacular than they are. I beg your pardon for my phrasing.
And I'll just add to that also, Matthew, we're inviting invitations for additional data sets. If there's a wish list of data sets that people feel like we could include. And there's a number of different updates that we're working on for the website. Also the downloadable functionality on the map. We're also working on downloadable PDFs. So in each section, instead of downloading an individual data set, you can download a suite which covers all of business, and there's a number of other data updates.
Great, thanks, Joe. We'll move on quickly now. Jimena, I'll read out your question just because of time. Great to hear that a direct Auckland-Sao Paulo flight is being explored. When can we expect it to become a reality? 30-second answer, please, Simon.
I'll give you a 10-second one. 12 to 18 months if an airline bites on the opportunity, which we think they will. So, but it takes 12 to 18 months. Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, Simon, thank you. And Jimena and Simon, if you haven't met each other, we can hook you up. Colombian Consulate, Simon from Eagle Aviation. Next one is from Palmerston North City Council. Phil, thank you. Any suggestions in regards to agri-tech and agribusiness partnership? I'm sure Phil might have a lot of answers. What might be good, Phil, if we're sharing your details, and then you can follow up that.
Yes,
offline.
please. Happy to help. Yes.
Yes. So the person from Palmerston North City Council, I didn't catch your name, but please follow up with us and we can connect you together with Phil. All right, I'll pause there because we're almost at 10 o'clock. If you want to stay on for 5 minutes even, if anyone else wants to share any feedback, ways they may already be using the Wayfinding web tool, or any other wish list about what they would want to see in the web tool, now's your chance. So would anyone like to speak to that?
Hey, Craig, I'll just add something. I think for a lot of people trying to do the storytelling and that conversation starting with New Zealand businesses, this really helped us demonstrate the figures. Great tool. Always an image says more than 1,000 words and a lot of data sheets. So really thank you for this amazing work centralizing one tool. So thanks a lot, Kate, for that.
Yeah, thanks, Floriana. Thanks for that lovely feedback. Any other questions or comments in a couple of minutes? No, okay. Well, listen, we'll finish up now. Within the web tool, there is also contact details. So if you do want to follow up with us with any other feedback, questions, suggestions, and so on, please do. We're now looking about, there are some data enhancements that are going to be done over coming months as well. So Joe, do you want to talk to that in 1 minute? Just a really quick summary about work that's going on in these couple of months.
Yeah, sure. I mentioned briefly a couple of those, but in the map functionality, we're adding the download function. The diplomacy and government presence is having an update to that chart. There's further data updates. We've received further data around some of the diplomatic visits and other data sets that are getting updated. And yeah, one of the most important things to stress is that we're going to be adding 1 or 2 data sets. So that's really the opportunity to add another data set that doesn't exist. What else? We're also working on expanding the mobile version. At the moment, it's obviously focused more on the desktop, but we're looking at how we can expand and enhance the mobile version. It's difficult to put the entire site on the mobile, but we just want to enhance that. So instead of being directed to the desktop site, you can get some information there. Perhaps it's just a case of being able to download the PDFs or something that's useful. So if people only have access to the mobile, then they can still, download some of the information.
Great. Well, full of appreciation is there. It's been an exciting project for the LATAM Cape team to be working on with Joe and his team. But as you can see, working with Simon, Matt, and Phil as well, we do work all in really closely because this is really stepping things up for Aotearoa New Zealand and Latin America. Exciting opportunities, but we are well connected and we connect well together how we offer services out to you as the public in whatever sector that you may be in. So listen, thanks so much everyone. We'll finish up now. So kia ora, remember Wayfinding web tool, there's the web address on there. It goes straight to the HTTPS site. Go use it, give us feedback. Remember, it is about people. There are a lot of people behind both the project, but the people behind the data. And this is the magic of this, is about people are really excited because this brings to a real focal point the relevance of Latin America to New Zealand, but also the relevance of New Zealand to Latin America. So we're excited for the future and where this could go. So we'll keep you updated. We look forward to hearing from you. I'll just pause and see Matthew, our director, any last words from you? And Nicole, who's been our project lead for Wayfinding, would you like to make any final comments?
Thanks, Craig, and thanks for everyone. It's been really, really interesting to see how you are actually now using the tool, and also to hear from the rest of our guests here on the webinar to see what you'd like to add to it. Basically, it's been a really interesting exercise in gathering together so many different sectors and seeing actually how much interest there is in Latin America and seeing how it all weaves together, because it does make connections between business and education, for example, or like you say, people. And I think it's just been really, really interesting to tell that story about how New Zealand is so closely connected to Latin America that people don't really realize how strong our relationships already are. So it's been a really gratifying project, and I'm looking forward to see it continue to grow. So thank you very much to all of you for your input, and I hope you enjoy using the tool.
Got it, Nicole. Matthew, if you're there, you may have already gone. Okay, well, listen, ngā mihi to everyone. I will finish with a very pertinent whakatauki from Māori, which is about kotahi te koho o te nirei I kuhuna ai, te miro mā, te miro pango, te miro whero, which means through the eye of the needle passes the white thread, the black thread, and the red thread. This is spoken by the first Māori king. It's a wonderful one about the implications about making connections and collaboration, which of course, this is about the work of the Latin America Cape, New Zealand Inc., but all of you who are interested in opportunities in Latin America, and obviously our peoples coming together. So thanks so much for attending today's webinar, and we look forward to hearing from you, but otherwise go use the web tool, and we look forward to hearing how you're doing that. So thanks, have a great day, and ngā mihi, muchas gracias, and ciao ciao. Thank you.
Ngā mihi, kia ora.
Kia ora.
Thank you.